Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Ray Starting with the Basics. Today we're going to be going over some tools. I got some that are right here. This one's rusted out, this one's rusted out, and I got a little bit of WD-40 here. We're going to go over on how you can take those apart, put them back together, and bring some rusty tools back to life. Stay tuned. Alright, so as you can see, I have a hammer. That's old and rusty. I got a pair of cutters that were left outside. Those are old and rusty. And for the most part, I'm going to be using a technique called wet sanding. So to do that, I have a glass of water, and I have a couple different types of sandpaper. This one here is 150 grit. There you go. And this other one over here is 320 grit. Alright, so first thing that I'm going to be working with is my cutters. I actually have to pull them apart. When I do that, because they have a spring inside of it, I have to be careful that that spring that's down in here, it's right down inside there, doesn't actually go flying anywhere. So I'm going to leave this in the locked position to start with. Okay, and then I'm going to disconnect this and then the centerpiece here to see if I can get a hold of that spring. Alright, let's move this water out of the way here. So I'm going to be putting the wrench on one side where I can hold it with my hand. Sometimes it goes forwards. There we go. That's a better fit. I can hold that in place with the thumb. Bring the ratchet on the other side here. And the 7/16 on there as well. So I'm going to hold with one finger, hold the wrench up to the actual cutters. Make sure that this is in the left position, so it's going to loosen it. Alright, now let's go ahead and get that center one off there. That one's going to be, for this particular brand of cutter, it's going to be 3/8. The brand of cutter that I have here that I'm using is an M3. Right here, M3. Alright, so now I'm going to leave this in the loosening position. I'm going to hold that with my left hand and get it set so I can hold everything with one hand. And then take the screw driver, drop that into the Phillips part. Okay. You ever have a nut that gets stuck inside of your socket, like that one's stuck inside of mine here? Take your screwdriver, if you can fit it through the back, or a piece of wire, maybe a nail or something, and just push it forward. Alright. Alright, so as I'm taking this apart, I'm taking this apart from top to bottom. So that's this nut, this particular nut and bolt, that screw, and then these two screws. I'm going to keep each of those pieces individual or separate. So that way when I go to put everything back together, I can just reverse the order that I actually took them apart. It's a very big step to actually remember, especially if you're doing any bigger projects, like tearing apart an engine or a transmission. I did that one time, and I methodically put everything in one spot and laid it out on how I took it apart, and then I went in reverse order and put all the stuff back together. There were pieces that are replaced, but that's a good tip. Alright, so let's keep on taking this thing apart here. Okay, you can see that it's pushing sideways here, which tells me my spring's getting ready to let go, so I need to be careful. Just like that. There it is. If you drop a bolt or you drop a screw, just listen for it. It'll tell you where it went. Alright, let's pull this other one off of here. Alright, so again, I kept everything separate. I kept everything isolated. Now, as you can see, I have different kinds of corrosion on this piece than I do on this piece. The spring doesn't appear to have any corrosion on it, so I'm not worried about it. My washer and that other stuff does still seem to have some corrosion on it. Now, when I get ready to do this, you can do a dry sand or a wet sand. I prefer to wet sand. To do that, I'll just take this piece here, tear off a chunk, bring my water back in here. Let's start with this piece here. Now for the parts that are deeper down in here, I need something that's kind of sturdy so I can fold my sandpaper over, then dip it back in the water, take it down in here, and repeat the process. This will give me something sturdier, so as I do this, it'll rub against it. You can also take a toothbrush or a toothpick or something like that, sometimes a screwdriver, and push that down in here. That'll give you another solid surface. Okay, take a shop rag, wipe this off. And like I said, we got some WD-40, so let's go ahead and spray this piece. After you clean up the corrosion, you want to put something on there to actually protect the metal. You can use paint, which was on this piece initially. You can see this part's blacker and that part's more silver, so that had paint on it. Or you can put something called a corrosion prevention compound. Buy that at Home Depot or Ace. Just go ahead, take that can, shake it up, spray a little bit on there after you sand it down. That'll prevent it from actually corroding again. So we got other parts here. I'm going to go through and repeat the same step and the same process. So just bear with me. Alright, so we got these parts here already taken care of. Now we got to move on to the actual hardware that hold it all together. For that part of it, I also brought out something called steel wool, as you can see right here. That will help clean up these bolts over here. Again, you can use the wet technique. I usually just wrap it in here and just kind of work it around. I am wearing gloves, and one of the reasons I'm wearing gloves is because steel wool likes to hurt you a bit if you're not careful. Alright, let's get her cleaned up. All right, let's make sure you see that there. So we have all the parts that we actually took apart. Here's our tools that we used. That's the WD-40. That's the cleaned up portions. So let's go ahead and wipe up this water here so we don't reintroduce more corrosion by accident. So all of this is going to be a little bit tricky to actually get back together. You would think that you would start at the bottom down here, but you're not. You're actually going to start at these center holes, and they're actually going to line up, kind of like that, where they overlap each other. And then you can use your bolt to slightly hold these in place like this. Then you're going to want to slide your spring in. And you can slide it in on an angle. Just like that. And then work it so it'll actually go through. Wrong one. This bolt, that's why. Let's line these up. Bring this bad boy in, pull it back open just a little bit. Three, two, one. All right, so you grab your bigger bolt. Very carefully get it lined up just like that. Now we don't want to tighten this down yet, but we do want it to stay in place. So we're going to go ahead and thread this bolt on. And it's got two sides on it. One's got a ridge, one doesn't. You want the one with the ridge facing towards the pliers. All right, towards the cutters, sorry. All right, so now this spring, I can move it wherever I want it, right? So now we're gonna slide that down here, and I'm gonna take this end, stick it down here, and then take this end, stick it down there. Okay, so there you go. That's everything loosely tightened back together, and you can still see I got plenty of play. Now I need to thread this bolt through, and I need the washer, and the washer is going to be on the front side here. So let's get that preloaded. Then as you squeeze these two together, that top part's going to actually line up. It won't line up completely perfect, but you'll be able to get it down there. Now you're going to have to hold it all together and then put this bolt, this nut, on the back of that bolt there. Just like that. Alright, so after that's done, go ahead and wipe your gloves off. It is highly recommended that you use gloves for this. Now I'm going to tighten this one down, but not all the way, just mostly. Flip that to the right to make sure it'll tighten. Again, I'm going to lock it in place. Set my wrench so I can hold it, just like that, all with one hand. snug this up a bit, not totally. A little bit more. So you can see I got a little bit of a gap. I don't want that much of a gap. Alright, so all those are tightened. Now I'm going to tighten the blades back together, and that'll bring our cutting surface. As you can probably see right here. Make sure you can actually see it there. You can see my hand through that, so that's not going to cut anything. That's why we're tightening it down more. Okay, let's make a test cut. This should cut this. There you go. We cut it all the way through for you. How do you like that? We took a tool that was old and rusty and it wasn't really working. Brought it right back into service. That'll do it for this week's episode of Ray Starting with the Basics. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button down below. And stay tuned for next week's episode. We're going to be going over restoring a hammer and a couple of different things that you can use to actually help keep this thing nice and fresh. See you later.